Silence is one of the most psychologically powerful forms of communication because what remains unspoken can sometimes reveal more than words ever could. A person may become silent because they are processing emotions, protecting themselves, avoiding conflict, feeling overwhelmed, or simply searching for the right words. But silence does not always mean the same thing, and understanding its meaning requires looking beyond the absence of speech. Sometimes silence is self-protection, especially when someone has learned that expressing their feelings leads to criticism, rejection, or punishment. They remain quiet not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned that speaking feels unsafe. Other times, silence becomes emotional withdrawal, a way of creating distance when someone feels hurt but cannot explain what they need. There is also a darker form of silence, where communication is deliberately withheld to create anxiety, guilt, or control. This is why silence can feel so powerful in relationships, because the mind naturally tries to fill unanswered spaces with its own explanations. When someone suddenly becomes distant, we begin analyzing their tone, their messages, their expressions, and every interaction that happened before the silence. The uncertainty can become more painful than an honest answer because the brain dislikes incomplete information and often creates stories to explain it. Silence can also reveal emotional exhaustion. Sometimes a person stops arguing not because they agree, but because they no longer believe being heard will change anything. They have explained themselves too many times, felt misunderstood too often, and eventually choose quietness, because continuing feels emotionally pointless. Yet silence can also be deeply healthy. It can create space for reflection, emotional regulation, and thoughtful responses instead of impulsive reactions. The psychology of silence, therefore, depends heavily on intention, context, and pattern. A quiet person is not necessarily angry, detached, manipulative, or unhappy. Sometimes they are simply thinking. The deeper question is not only why someone is silent, but what their silence consistently communicates. Is it peace, protection, exhaustion, avoidance, punishment, or acceptance? Understanding this difference can transform the way we interpret people in relationships. Sometimes silence is a wall, sometimes it is a shield, and sometimes it is the language of someone who has finally realized that not every feeling needs to become an argument. But when silence becomes a permanent substitute for honest communication, it can slowly create emotional distance where connection once existed. The healthiest relationships understand that silence has meaning, but they also know that genuine intimacy eventually requires the courage to speak.